Hello and welcome. Have tensions between the United States and Pakistan reached breaking point? Recent events, including the NATO border attack that killed 3 Pakistani soldiers, have put heavy strains on the relationship between the two allies. In the wake of the attack, armed men torched at least 20 NATO fuel trucks, and Pakistan also closed a key NATO supply route into Afghanistan. Another major source of tension is the escalation of CIA drone attacks in the country's border areas. On today's show, we ask, what can be done to salvage US-Pakistan relations? Remember, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments. Call into the show or send us an SMS text message or email us with your name and location. Now, joining me to discuss this topic is from Islamabad, Talat Masood, a retired 3-star Lieutenant General in the Pakistan Army. He has also served as a high-ranking official in his country's Ministry of Defense. And here with me in the studio is Christine Fair. She is a political scientist and assistant professor at Georgetown University's Center for Peace and Security Studies. Dr. Fair's work focuses on political and military affairs in South Asia. Welcome to both of you to the program.
Thank you.
Christine Fair, let me start with you. We have seen these periodic shifts in the relationship between the United States and Pakistan. It seems to blow hot and cold. It seems to be very cyclical. This time around, though, are we seeing something more serious?
You know, in some sense, it's a variation on an old theme. What brings the United States and Pakistan together is usually some important geostrategic event. But this doesn't really change the underlying problem that we don't actually have strategic interests that are thoroughly aligned. And Afghanistan really demonstrates this. We want an Afghanistan that's preferably free of the Taliban, and for reasons that are clear, Pakistan still prefers the Taliban to have some control, although it's completely negotiable to some extent how much control they have. And so while we have this overlapping area of interest regarding perhaps Al-Qaeda, when it comes to the Afghan Taliban, we don't. And then, of course, there's the Pakistan Taliban, and we recognize the Pakistanis are fighting as best as they can. But their ability to pacify the tribal areas is not exactly on the same clock as the Obama administration needs to begin a reasonable withdrawal in the time frame that's stated in July 2011. And no matter what General Petraeus has said, that is a real timeline. He softened it, but the reality is Obama wants to begin wrapping up military operations and really moving the relationship towards a normal relationship with the state in terms of development and training, rather than having a strong military presence in Afghanistan.
Okay, let's go to General Masood in Islamabad. General, do you agree that the strategic interests of the United States and Pakistan are in fact different?
Well, I would say in certain matters they converge, and in certain issues there is a huge divergence. And I would say that it's a very complicated relationship, and their perceptions are also different, and priorities are different. And I will explain this in very briefly, that I think as far as stability is concerned, as far as strengthening Pakistan is concerned, I think Pakistan really welcomes the type of assistance it receives, both military as well as now economic, in a very significant way from the United States, and it expects that it would continue to sort of provide that. But at the same time, as regards India, as regards certain aspects in Afghanistan, which are truly speaking a spillover of our relationship with India, there is a divergence in that. Then there is, of course, a huge divergence as to the priorities in taking on North Waziristan, where there are huge sanctuaries of Al-Qaeda, at the same time of Haqqani group, which are supposed to be the real enemy of the United States and NATO forces, whereas Pakistan at least does not consider them such a great threat. So I think here, there is a great divergence, and it is because of this that you find that all the time we are having these sometimes incursions and drone attacks, because obviously United States and NATO thinks that it is not possible for them to tolerate sanctuaries from where they can attack. But at the same time, Pakistan thinks that there is a historical context to it, and it has limitations, and it also has certain interests in the Pashtuns, very solid interests in fact, and it doesn't want that those should be in any way compromised.
Could I hop in on the drone issue for a second, if that would be okay. You know, the drones are really interesting because when I interact with senior Pakistani civilians as well as military personnel, and of course American counterparts, they all concede these drones are not killing the civilians, the innocent civilians as alleged. So but obviously there are numerous media reports, and my personal view is that this is deliberate, you know, misinformation to create a lot of hostility towards American policy, but also towards this very specific instrument. Now, it has to be remembered that we are launching those drone strikes from Pakistani soil with Pakistani intelligence input, and increasingly, especially since Baytullah Masood was killed in August of 2008, targeting Pakistan's terrorists as well as our own. So the drone program is really quite interesting. You know, the Pakistanis can't go into North Waziristan, and they'll tell you this. Not only is it not a priority, as General Masood laid out, and he's absolutely right, they also have fairly serious limitations. I mean, the flood, I mean, the Pakistan military is spread out, is about as far as it can be. They need the drone strike. So the drones, I think, really illustrate one of the frustrating elements in the U.S.-Pakistan relationship, and frankly, that's dishonesty. I mean, the Pakistan government has a certain position which is completely discordant with reality, and the U.S. government won't come clean with the Pakistani people either. And so in some sense, the drones really, in a very small program, reflect some of the very basic problems that our countries have relating to each other at the state-to-state level, but most importantly at the people-to-people level, where I think it matters.
When you say there's some kind of misinformation coming out of Pakistan, which is generating hostility towards the United States, who's responsible for that?
Look, this is how does one be delicate? I mean, when you meet Pakistani journalists, they are not even in denial that they receive payments from the intelligence agencies. And that's the interesting side of Pakistan's new vibrant media, is that a lot of it's for rent. And there'll be Pakistani journalists that talk about this. Now, the other issue is that there are no independent journalists that have access to the tribal areas because of its unusual constitutional status. So none of those alleged allegations of civilian casualties can ever be independently confirmed. They're not buttressed, for example, by actual funeral notices. They're completely unsubstantiated. And then, of course, the Taliban themselves have direct lines of communication with the media. So I think it's probably a combination of media management. The Pakistani intelligence is very good at managing the media in Pakistan, and I don't think anyone really who's being honest is going to deny that. I feel awkward saying it, many Pakistani journalist friends, but they'll be the ones that joke about it themselves. You know, they'll meet an ISI media officer and they say, well, how much would it take to get you on our payroll? I mean, that's how open it is. But that's a really good example of a situation where a lot of Americans get really frustrated. Another good example is the managed outrage over Carrie Lugar-Berman. Yes, Pakistanis want our aid, but guess what? As Hillary Clinton said it herself, if you think the conditions affect your sovereignty, then exercise your sovereignty and not take the money. And the Pakistan embassy had been thoroughly involved in the conditionalities of Carrie Lugar-Berman. The Pakistan embassy had their defense representation there. I myself testified at some of these hearings. I know they were there. And then as soon as it's released, there's this orchestrated outrage to create domestic indignity over the terms of the aid package.
Okay, let me ask General Masood about what you've called there the orchestrated outrage. General, we've seen this anger from the Pakistanis, especially in the wake of this attack on the border, which left 3 Pakistani soldiers dead. Is this just manufactured anger to placate a local constituency in Pakistan?
No, I wouldn't say that. Actually, I think I go along, Chris, that as far as the drones are concerned, I think there is a huge level of tolerance from the Pakistani side, and they also think, both the military as well as the civilian government, that there is definitely a certain level of utility as far as drones are concerned, because obviously these areas where the drones are striking are not under the writ of the government or the military. So when they strike at these places, so at least these militants remain contained, and I think that precision has improved considerably over a certain period of time, especially since they are using missiles which are lighter than in the past, and there is hardly, as I would call, or it is normally called, the collateral damage to innocent civilians. To that extent, I agree. But I think there are always red lines for any country. And you can imagine that when there was tolerance for drones, it does not mean that there is also tolerance for incursions which are unlawful and illegal, and at the same time they completely expose the helplessness of the military as well as of the government. So I think what you are doing is you are unnecessarily sort of weakening the government, and also putting so much of pressure on the military to sort of react, and also giving a huge leverage to the militants to really exploit this, that what has happened to Pakistan, that with such a large army, with such resources being spent on the military, and all the time being trumpeted that US and Pakistan has such excellent strategic relationship, and they are allies, and on the other hand what you find is that the most allied ally is being sort of struck down by its helicopters and planes. So I think this is obviously something which cannot be accepted by the people, and it will not be tolerated. And I think US has understood this, and that is why you find that the Secretary General of the NATO, as well as General Petraeus, I believe, has spoken to General Kiani, saying that I apologize and we really regret the loss of lives, and there is an inquiry which is going on, which is a joint inquiry, and hopefully matters would be settled. But it is unfortunate that the Pentagon and the GHQ, which is our general headquarters, which is the Army headquarters, and also the two civilian governments, had developed excellent relations or improved their relationship in the last 6 months.
Okay.
And perhaps it was at its best, and it's so unfortunate that this has happened.
Okay, General, thank you. We are going to have to take a short break right now. More of our discussion in a moment. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. Today we're discussing the future of US-Pakistan relations. Joining us are Talat Masood, a retired Lieutenant General in the Pakistan Army, where he served for 39 years. Since his retirement, he has written extensively on Pakistani security and political issues. And with me here in Washington, D.C. is Dr. Christine Fair, an assistant professor at Georgetown University's Center for Peace and Security Studies. Her research focuses on political and military affairs in South Asia. Let's get back to the discussion, and let's go straight to the phones. Assad has been waiting to talk to us. He is in Pakistan. Assad, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question that Pakistan has been supporting Western troops in Afghanistan, and I would like to ask a question that is there a time frame in Afghanistan till how long this war would be continued, and why Pakistan is always doubted despite helping the American troops or American here in Islamabad. Pakistan is always the subject on a doubt, and till how long the war would be continued? I think there is no time frame.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Assad.
Well, let me take the doubt issue. Yeah. We've spent a lot of time talking about the Pakistani outrage over these incursions, and I certainly agree with General Talat Masood that the helicopter strikes, this is not manufactured outrage, and it's not the first time it's happened. In 2008 there were also Frontier Corpsmen that were hit with artillery. But let's take it to the American street for a second, because there's a comparable outrage. It's just that Americans are not as well informed about Pakistan as Pakistanis are about the United States, and that is from the well-informed American point of view, we've paid Pakistan $19 billion plus to participate in the global war on terrorism, when we know, and Pakistanis don't deny, Pakistani intelligence and military officials don't deny, at least anymore, that they are continuing to support Haqqani, and they're continuing to support the Afghan Taliban. Our troops in Afghanistan are not being killed by al-Qaeda, they're being killed by the Taliban. So when you talk to American policymakers, American analysts, and people like me, I'm a longstanding friend of Pakistan, it frustrates me too that we're paying Pakistan to be a partner in the war on terror when they are deliberately, as a part of their strategic interests, which I understand Pakistan's strategic interests, supporting the very people that are killing our troops. And then the other issue surrounds groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba, which Pakistan also continues to support. And I also understand from the Pakistanis' point of view, because I spent a lot of time there, they don't see this. What they see are the Pakistani military operations against the Pakistani Taliban. But they don't see the entire community of militants against which Pakistan is only focusing part of its attention. So if Pakistanis are outraged that there have been a handful of troops killed in this helicopter incursion, you might imagine the informed Americans' point of view that we've paid the Pakistanis $19 billion and we've lost over 1,000 troops due to Pakistan's proxies. And so this is not an elegant answer, and no one likes to hear it. But the reasons for doubt on both sides are real. And it's my prediction that in the next few years, we're going to have another serious splitting of the relationship over Pakistan's support for groups like Lashkar. And from the Pakistanis' point of view, their inability to somehow satisfy the U.S. And this kind of ties into this misinformation campaign that we were talking about before the break. The Pakistani intelligence and military establishment is very good at creating perceptions among Pakistanis and getting real information in there to inform the debate. It's a hermetically sealed system of myths and beliefs.
Well, let's ask General Massoud about that. General Massoud, is that the problem that we're seeing here, that what the United States wants Pakistan to do and what Pakistan wants to do are two very different things?
That is true that there is a huge difference, when it comes to these groups. But, you have to look at it in the historical context as to exactly, the interests converged with the United States when both wanted, Islamic radicalism or fanaticism to be a bastion against communism. And, and we had to sort of carry the legacy of that. And all of us, and then we have also used these proxies in Afghanistan and also in against India, the Lashkar-e-Taiba and so on, in order to sort of achieve our aims in Kashmir and also ensure that we have a certain level of influence, because the Northern Alliance and the northern part and western part of Afghanistan was very pro-Indian. So I think, it is essentially the relationship with India which bedevils and which brings about this sort of grave misunderstandings, or for that matter, divergence in our perceptions. So I would say that Pakistan is going through a change. It realizes that the coexisting with the militants is no more feasible, and it's extremely destabilizing, because as you are aware that they have turned inwards and are attacking the Pakistan state. So I think to that extent, if the Americans also be more sympathetic, and also the Indians and Pakistanis could somehow the other also understand the gravity of the situation and its fallout on the region, I think things could change. But the unfortunate part is that there has hardly been any progress as far as India-Pakistan relations are concerned. And that shadow is all the time being cast on the US-Pakistan relations as well, because obviously the US thinks India is an extremely important strategic partner and a regional player, which till such time that Pakistan normalizes its relations with India gets more and more complicated.
Okay, let's take another call. This is from Ahmad in Kabul. Ahmad, go ahead with your question.
My question is from General Massoud. The question is very simple. The Pakistani, why they were think that they should interfere on Afghanistan relationship? Like example, the ISI, which now they are out of control of even their own government, and the general knows that very well, that the ISI arrested Mullah Brother, the Taliban commander, which he was in talk with Afghan government, and many requests from Afghan government. They never wanted to hand them over to Afghan government. And also the Pakistanis wanted to fight their war with India and Afghanistan. Why is that? As a Muslim, I don't think they're allowed to do that. As a human being, they shouldn't allow to do that. Afghanistan is suffering from Pakistan the past 3 decades.
All right, thanks, Ahmed. Let me put that question then to General Massoud.
Well, I would say that as far as Pakistan is concerned, there is no doubt that it has relations with the Afghan Taliban, and that again, as I said earlier, there is a history behind it. When the United States and the Western world abandoned Afghanistan, it was left to itself, and as you know, Taliban acquired a certain prominence and became very powerful. Pakistan wants its borders, especially the east and the south and the Pashtun side, to stabilize, and I think it didn't want a very hostile Afghanistan when you already have a very hostile India. So it didn't want to look on both the borders. So I think it tried to sort of, under the circumstances, even if it was a devil, they wanted to have a good relationship with them. But as I said earlier, there were social implications of it, because there was an ideological blowback of the Taliban, which the tribal belt has suffered. And as you know, the tribal belt was used as a springboard for years against the Soviets, and that springboard has turned into something so chaotic because the tribal belt already had a history. So I think all these things combined, we fully understand there is no question of Pakistan influencing Afghanistan. Even the United States, the Soviet Union, and no other country in the world has influenced Afghanistan. How on earth can we influence Afghanistan?
Okay.
All we want is a friendly Afghanistan.
Okay,
Actually,
so
could I make a couple
we've
of
run
points
out
here
of time.
before?
I'm sorry,
That's
Christine.
all right.
We've run out of time. Thank you, General Masood, for being out with us, and Dr. Fair, thank you for being with us as well. And thank you for watching. Remember, you can follow the Riz Khan Show on Facebook, where you can leave us your feedback and share comments with our viewers from all over the world. On the next show, fighting for his rights. He was tortured in secret CIA prisons and is still being held in Guantanamo Bay without charge. We follow the extraordinary story of Abed al-Rahim al-Nashiri and his quest for justice. Make sure you tune in for that. See you next time.